The knock came at 4 in the morning, 3 soft taps, the kind a child makes when they have been told not to wake the neighbors. I sat up in bed and listened. It came again. I went down the stairs barefoot and looked through the peephole and saw the top of a small head with hair sticking up on one side from sleep. When I opened the door, Mateo, my neighbor's 9-year-old son, was standing on my porch in pajama pants with a winter coat thrown on over them, holding a folded piece of paper in his hand. His chin was shaking. His eyes were enormous. "My mom said to give you this," he whispered. "She said don't go to work today. She said please." I took the paper. It was warm from his hand. I asked him what was wrong, and he looked back over his shoulder at his own house across the street, terrified, like somebody might be watching from a window, and he said, "You'll understand by 10. I have to go back before he knows I left. Then he turned and ran across the dark street in pajamas and slipped through his own front door, and I was standing alone on my porch, holding a piece of paper that was about to change everything I thought I knew about the people who lived around me. 6 hours later, I was sitting in the back of an unmarked police vehicle, watching paramedics roll a body bag out of the dental office where I had worked for the last 4 years. And a federal investigator was telling me that if I had clocked in that morning the way I did every other morning, the body bag would have had my name on the toe tag. If you want to know what was inside that note, and what a quiet woman across the street had to do to get it to me without dying herself, hit subscribe right now and tell me your city in the comments. I am only telling this story because the woman who saved my life cannot tell it herself, and the only way I know how to honor what she did is to make sure as many people as possible hear it. So please, listen to the end. The note was on a torn-out page from a child's school notebook, the spiral edge frayed where it had been ripped out fast. The handwriting was a woman's, neat and tight and shaking. It said, "Kala, do not go to work today. Do not call the office. Do not text anyone you work with. Do not answer your phone if it is a number you do not recognize. Stay inside, lock everything, close the blinds. At 10 o'clock, turn on the news. You will understand. I am sorry, I cannot say more. Please trust me. P." I read it 3 times. The first time I thought it was a prank. The second time I thought it was a misunderstanding. The third time I sat down on the floor of my kitchen because my legs would not hold me. Pilar Ostrander, the woman who lived in the house directly across from mine, the woman I had said hello to at the mailboxes maybe 4 times, had sent her 9-year-old son out into the dark at 4 in the morning to bring me a handwritten warning. Whatever she knew, she could not call me. She could not text me. She could not come herself. The only way she could safely get this message to me was to wake her child, write the note in secret, and send him across a dark street while her husband slept upstairs. My name is Calla Whitford. I'm 32 years old, and I worked as a pediatric dental hygienist at a small office in a suburb just outside Atlanta. I cleaned children's teeth for a living. I gave them stickers when they were brave and dinosaur toothbrushes for being good. I knew every regular patient by name, knew which kids hated the bubblegum fluoride and which ones liked the mint. I'd been at the office 4 years. The dentist I worked under, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Ramos, had hired me right out of school. The receptionist, Junie, brought me coffee every morning without me having to ask. The other hygienist, Brielle, was one of my closest friends. It was a small office. We were a small family, or that's what I thought we were. I lived alone in a rented house on a cul-de-sac of 9 houses where everybody waved but nobody really knew anybody. I had a black cat named Olive who slept on my chest at night. I called my mother on Tuesdays. My life was small and quiet and exactly the size I wanted it. I did not know my neighbor across the street's last name with certainty. I had never been inside her house. I knew her son's name only because she had once shouted it from her front porch when he was riding his bike. That was the entire history of our relationship before she sent him to my door at 4 in the morning to keep me alive. I sat on my kitchen floor with the note in my hand and Olive curled around my feet. The first thing I did, after maybe 10 minutes, was call my office. I know the note told me not to. I did it anyway, because some part of my brain still believed there had to be a normal explanation for any of this. Junie always got in at 6:30 to start the coffee and turn on the lobby music. At 6:30 exactly, I called her cell, voicemail. I tried the office line. It rang and rolled to the answering service. I tried Junie's cell again, voicemail. I tried Dr. Ramos, voicemail. I tried Brielle, voicemail. Every single one of them on a Thursday morning when the office opened at 8 and people had to be there to set up. I sat on my kitchen floor with my phone in my hand and the cold went all the way through me. I did what the note told me to do. I locked the deadbolt and the chain on the front door. I went to the back door and locked that too. I went around and pulled every blind in every room. I went into my bedroom and I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone face down on the nightstand. I did not turn on the television. I was not ready. I waited. The waiting was the worst part of that whole morning. Worse than the news. Worse than what came after. I sat in my own dark bedroom with my own cat on my lap, and I listened for sounds I could not name. Every car that went past the house made me jump. Every refrigerator hum made my throat tighten. At one point, my phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I looked at the screen and it was an unknown number, and I let it ring all the way through, and the voicemail notification pinged and I deleted it without listening. I did not eat. I did not drink water. I did not move. I just sat there and watched the digital clock on my nightstand go from 7 to 8 to 9 to 9:45. At 9:50, I got off the bed and went to the living room and stood in front of the television. At 10 exactly, I turned it on. The first thing I saw was the front of my office. There were police cars, ambulances. A reporter standing on the opposite curb with her hand pressed against her ear, listening to her producer. The headline at the bottom of the screen said breaking. Multiple fatalities at medical office park. Authorities on scene. I could not breathe. I could not sit down. I stood in the middle of my living room for a long time with the remote in my hand. The reporter was saying that authorities had not released any information about the victims yet, that families were being notified, that this was an active investigation, that the public was asked not to come to the area. I want to break in here for a second because I know this is the part where some of you are going to start to feel sick. I felt sick too. I sat on my couch with my hand over my mouth and watched the news for almost an hour before I could move. I am telling you what I saw because somebody listening to this video right now is in a job or a relationship or a life situation where something has not added up for a while, and they have been telling themselves it is fine. And the people around them have been telling them it is fine, and it is not fine. Whatever the quiet voice in your stomach is saying to you, listen to it. That voice is older than you are, and it is trying to keep you alive. The full story came out over the next 2 weeks, in pieces. A man had walked into the front of the dental office at 7:45 in the morning, 15 minutes before patients were due to arrive, while the staff were unlocking exam rooms and setting up trays. He had a list of names with him. He had photographs. He had been hired. The dental practice had been a front. Dr. Ramos, the kind, soft-spoken man who had hired me 4 years earlier, had been running an insurance fraud operation through the office for almost 6 years. He had been billing insurance companies for procedures that had never been performed, on real patients whose information had been stolen, on dead patients whose files had not yet been removed from the system, on children who had never set foot in his office. He had collected millions of dollars. He had partners. The federal investigation had been quietly closing in on him for almost a year. He had figured out they were close. He had panicked. He had decided the only way to keep the operation from being traced back to him was to eliminate every employee who could testify about anything they had seen, even people who had no idea anything wrong was happening. He had hired the man who walked into the office that morning. He had paid him in cash. He had given him our names, our descriptions, our parking spots, and our schedules. The man had killed Junie at the front desk. He had killed Brielle in the back. He had killed 2 other staff members whose families have asked for privacy. He had been waiting for me. My shift started at 8. I parked in the same spot every day. He knew what I drove. He had been told not to leave the building until I was on the floor with the others. The reason I was not in that office that morning, the only reason on this earth, was that Pilar Ostrander, my quiet neighbor across the street, was a senior records analyst at one of the largest health insurance companies in the Southeast, and she had been pulled into the federal investigation as a confidential cooperator 9 months earlier. Her husband Kent did not know. Her son did not know. Nobody on our street knew. She had been doing it quietly for almost a year. I learned all of this much later, in a small federal building downtown, from an investigator who told me what she had wanted me to know. The night before the attack, Pilar had received a routine alert at home on the personal laptop she used for cooperation work. One of the suspects had searched a particular database for the home addresses of dental office staff. The alert came through at 1 in the morning. Kent was asleep upstairs. Pilar opened the alert at her kitchen table, and she saw the search results, and she saw the name of my office on the list, and she saw my name on the staff sheet, and she understood what was about to happen. She tried to alert her handler immediately. She got a confirmation back at 1:20. Then she sat at her kitchen table for 3 hours, refreshing the secure portal, waiting for an update, and the update did not come. Somewhere in the chain of communication, between her handler and the people who were supposed to act on this, somebody had decided that the threat was not credible enough to mobilize local police in the middle of the night. They were going to wait until business hours. They were going to verify. They were going to be careful. By 4 in the morning, Pilar had realized that no one was coming. She could not call me. She did not know whose phones were being monitored. She could not text. She could not email. She could not come over herself, because Kent was a light sleeper, and she did not yet know, in that moment at her kitchen table, exactly how Kent fit into all of this. She had her suspicions. She had been having them for months. She had not yet shared them with the investigators because she was afraid of what would happen to her son if she was wrong. So she did the only thing she could think of. She woke her son. She told him only that she needed him to do something brave, and that she needed him not to ask any questions until later. She had him put his coat on over his pajamas. She wrote me the note on a piece of paper from his school notebook. She walked him to the front door. She watched through the curtain as he crossed the dark street. She watched him knock on my door. She watched him come back. She put him back into his bed, and she told him he was the bravest boy she had ever known. Then she sat on the edge of his bed and watched him fall asleep, and at some point in the next hour she made a decision. She knew that whatever role her husband had in any of this, the federal investigation was about to come down on her household like a wrecking ball. She knew her cooperation was about to be exposed. She knew her son was going to grow up without his mother in the house, in some way, no matter what happened next. She knew the people behind the operation, if they figured out who had tipped me off, would not stop at a dental office. They would come for her. They would come for her boy. So, at 6 in the morning, while Kent was still asleep, she packed a small bag. She wrote a note for Kent on the kitchen counter, telling him she had taken Mateo to her sister's. Then she did something she had been quietly preparing for almost a year. She drove Mateo 3 streets over to the house of a woman she had been carefully cultivating a friendship with. A woman who had been told that if Pilar ever showed up with her son at an unusual hour, she should take him in, ask no questions, and call no one until Pilar called first. She kissed her son on the forehead. She told him she loved him. She told him she would see him as soon as she could. Then she drove to a federal building downtown and walked in through the front door and asked to speak to her handler. She gave a sworn statement that took 6 hours. She named her husband. She named the people he was working with that she had been quietly documenting. She handed over evidence she had been collecting on a thumb drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book on her own bookshelf. She told them everything she knew, including the fact that her husband had been on his computer the night before, looking at a list of dental office employees, and that she had recognized my office, and that she had sent her son across the street with a note because she could not think of any other way to save my life. Federal investigators arrested Kent at noon that day. He was taken from their house in handcuffs, while Mateo sat at the friend's house 3 streets over eating cereal in front of cartoons. Because his mother had thought ahead, Pilar entered protective custody that afternoon. Her son was placed with her sister, who flew in from Tucson the next day. 23 people were eventually arrested in connection with the operation. The man who had walked into our office that morning was caught 2 days later at a motel in Alabama, where he had been waiting to be paid the second half of his fee. 11 people are dead. 4 of them were my co-workers. The rest were employees of 2 other offices that had been hit earlier in the same week, in the same coordinated effort that none of us had known anything about. I was the only employee of the 4 targeted offices who did not show up to work that morning. The only one. I want to break in one more time, because the next part is what I most need you to hear. I never spoke to Pilar again. I tried. I sent letters to the federal building she had walked into asking if any of them could be forwarded. I left messages with her sister in Tucson. I drove past her house every day for months looking for any sign she had come home. She did not come home. She is, the last I was told, somewhere safe, somewhere far away, with her son. I will probably never see her again. I will probably never get to thank her. I will probably never get to tell her that I have a small framed photograph of her on my dresser, the one that ran in the local paper, and that I look at it every morning when I get dressed for work, and that I think about her son's face on my porch in his pajamas, and I think about what it cost her to save a woman she had said hello to at the mailboxes maybe 4 times, and I cannot put it into words. There is one more thing I have to tell you, because it changed everything I thought I understood about that night. About 6 months after the arrests, I got a call from a woman who said she was Pilar's sister. Not a long call, maybe 10 minutes. She told me Pilar wanted me to know something specific, and that she had asked her sister to call me because Pilar herself could not. She told me that on the night Pilar sent Mateo across the street, when she sat at her kitchen table watching the secure portal and waiting for help that was not coming, she was not only thinking about me, she had 2 names. The list her husband had been looking at in his office that night had 2 names highlighted. Mine and a woman named Yara Chen, who worked at one of the other offices that was hit, an office in a suburb across town. Pilar had only 1 child to send. She had only 1 note she could write before her husband would notice her gone from bed. She had, she calculated, time to save one of us. She had to choose. The reason she chose me was because my house was directly across from hers, and Mateo could be there and back in under 3 minutes, and Yara Chen lived 20 miles away in a part of the city Pilar could not reach without leaving the house and being noticed. Yara Chen was 34 years old. She was a single mother. She had 2 small children. She died at her desk that morning at 7:51, 2 minutes before the man with the list walked through the front door of her office. Pilar's sister told me that Pilar had not been able to forgive herself for the choice she made. That she still woke up at night, 6 months later, in whatever city she was now living in, thinking about Yara Chen and Yara Chen's children. That Pilar had asked her sister to find me and tell me that I needed to know, because she wanted me to understand exactly what my life had cost. I did not say much on the phone. I do not remember most of what I said. I do remember asking her sister to please tell Pilar that what she did was not a small thing, that one woman against an entire system had done what no one else could do, and that she had saved at least one of us when she could have saved none. I do not know if her sister ever passed that on. I hope she did. I have spent a lot of time, in the years since, thinking about Yara Chen. I have lit a candle for her every year on the anniversary of the day. I have written letters to her children that I have not sent, because I do not know what right I have to send them. I changed careers. I could not work in a dental office anymore. I went back to school and I am a pediatric nurse now. I work with sick children. I think about Mateo on my porch in his pajamas every time a child reaches for my hand. There are a lot of things I have learned from what happened. The biggest one is the one I want to leave you with. The world does not ask permission before it puts you on a list. There are forces moving around all of us all the time, decisions being made about our lives by people we will never meet, and the only thing standing between us and any one of those decisions is the small acts of attention from the people who happen to be near us. The neighbor who notices something, the friend who calls, the coworker who looks twice, the stranger who steps in front of the thing coming at you. We are taught that our lives are ours, that we earn them, that we control them. We do not. We get them on loan from the people around us, every single day. Some of those people are loud and obvious, and we love them and we know what they have done for us. Most of them are not. Most of them are quiet women at kitchen tables, making impossible choices in the middle of the night, with no good options, knowing they will lose something no matter what they do. They do it anyway. The price of being saved by someone like that, I learned, is that you never get to fully repay it. You spend the rest of your life trying. The only thing you can do is pay the same kind of attention, the next time, to somebody else. The next time you see a name on a list. The next time you see a coworker who has gotten quiet in a way that does not feel right. The next time you see a child who is not eating their lunch the way they used to. The next time you see a friend who has stopped answering her phone. Pay attention. Reach across the street, knock on the door, send the note. You will not always know if you are right. You will not always be thanked. You may, sometimes, be wrong. But the cost of looking away when you should not have, that cost, the cost Pilar paid every single night thinking about Yara Chen, is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry. And I would not wish it on anyone listening to this. If this story reached you, do me one favor. Find one person in your life right now who has gotten quiet, who has changed in a way you cannot put your finger on, who you have been telling yourself is probably fine. Reach out to them today, not tomorrow. Today, send a text, call, drop by, knock on the door. You do not have to know what to say. Just show up. Just let them know you noticed, and tell me down below who you reached out to. I want their names to exist somewhere, even if it's just a thread on the internet, because somebody on that list is a Yara Chen, and somebody on that list still has time, and the woman who taught me that lesson paid for it with everything she had. And the very least I can do is make sure her lesson keeps moving.